All right, well, it's a week after the Miami Grand Prix because the race stunk so much that Kyle's body got a throat infection, a viral throat infection, and we couldn't record until now. So it's been a week. Apologies if this is a little bit later
That's
than
not
we
how
expected.
I would put it.
Yes.
Maybe it was so
We're
exciting
creating-
that it knocked me off my feet and I
Yes.
snapped my spine and I've been out of commission.
You've recovered a lot for, snapping your spine. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? Modern medicine,
yeah. Beautiful. All right, we had the Miami Grand Prix, and there's actually a little bit to talk about. I think I actually did make a few notes, because there's like a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Mainly it's the pre-race stuff, because that
Yes.
seemed to be the most interesting. We'll talk about the one viral clip and moment in a little bit, but I want to talk, before we go into anything else, I want to talk about the qualifying, because the qualifying really set us up for, I think,
Yes.
it's the main reason the race was as interesting as it was, because I feel like if we didn't have that qualifying, I think that race would have been a bit of a snooze fest, given how fast Max was. Yes, Baku 2, it did kind of feel like it was potentially shaping up that way, but yeah, that Q3 in particular, I think it caught everyone a bit off guard, although I feel like Charles going into the wall should be something we expect at this point. He's done it so much.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
yes.
Yeah, tick off the bingo card I feel like you've scribbled it, crossed it so many times that it's now digging
Tested
through the
twice.
paper. Yeah, so yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it made for a super interesting start for the race. At least the grid lineup, with Verstappen not getting a first lap in, with his kind of bottled his first lap. So he never set a representative lap, had to start P9. Turns out it didn't matter, but it at least made it a little bit interesting towards the end with his fight with Checo, as short-lived as it was. But yeah, did you expect the race to be more exciting from that qualifying, where it ended up?
I don't know. I think a note in the qualifying is it proved that the banker lap sometimes does matter. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 laps, and often you have the first 2, but really everyone looks forward for the last one.
True.
But in this case, the first 3 laps were so interesting, because half the drivers there kind of got a pretty good lap in, and it was all mixed all over the place. The other half didn't.
Yeah.
You went, right, but they're going to get their last runs in. And then, of course, we were on board with Leclerc, which often happens. I feel like most incidents we see with him, we're on board with him.
Yes.
So it's nice to always get that live reaction where you
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
oh, no, he's done it again. It's the cameraman curse, or it's not the commentator's
Yeah.
curse for him.
Yes.
And then, of course, he went off, and you kind of went, that's big. And you're like, he was near the front of the queue, even if they localize yellow it, which, again, they've been so safety prone, red flag privy.
Mm-hmm.
You went, well, of course they're going to red flag it. And then they did, and then you went, oh, there's two.
There's not enough time.
Not enough to go out there and do it again.
No.
So you went,
Like,
huh,
yep, that's it.
well, that settles it. And then
Yep.
you looked at the order, you went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So it gave us a little bit to look forward to. Again, I think, as we mentioned a little bit on our preview, it's our second year here, but we didn't really know what to expect. There didn't seem to be too many changes. I think some of the few changes they did make is they actually shortened some of the DRS zones, which was interesting topic of conversation.
Yep.
So we went, well, back where you'd think you need to shorten them, they were too short. And then here they went, let's do it again. And everyone, including the drivers, is like,
well,
okay, don't know what you're cooking, but all right.
Yeah. Well, let's lead. I don't know if you've done any research. Let's lead into our a new segment for the show. Then the FIA technical difficulties. I don't know if you've got
Already?
anything. Yeah, why not? Let's just go into it. That's a good segue. Yeah, as yet unsponsored segment, but feel free to change that at, I don't know, any companies that energy drink related or car manufacturers. Feel free to contact us. You can sponsor the FIA technical difficulties segment.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
I think, as we said, actually, post this race, there wasn't too much really that kind of killed.
Yeah, I know, right.
I haven't done my deep dive research, but I guess notables are getting to the race. There also wasn't any retirements, which kind of means they
Yes.
didn't really have any area to stuff it up. So if something had have come up and there was no retirements, then okay, good job. That's a good start, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like with literally the next race, you were talking about, like, we need to make this a proper segment. There's been an FIA. There's been an FIA fuck-up shittery every single race, and this is the first race. After we make it an official segment, there's like, nothing happened. They were on their best behavior this time, and that makes me a little upset, because I wanted to...
Well, so there was something minor... which I did make a mental note of, and I just had a look and it reminded me.
Fantastic.
It's technically the FIA. They had the Porsche Super Cup there, and there was a picture basically of the Porsches going around with essentially a tow truck that was driving around the track with them.
Oh, fantastic! And
some people seem to say that on like a safety car or on like an outlap or something like that, the truck was out with them. The other half I saw was a shot of the cars just pulling to the track, which, as if most people don't know, a lot of support series don't come out of the pit lane. They have to come out partway through the track, make their way around to the front.
Similar to Australia,
Exactly, like we saw in person, right? Yeah. So I didn't confirm whether that was just they were doing some works while everyone was pulling out to get to their start, which I don't think I have any concerns about for safety, because the drivers are supposed to meander around because who knows who's going to be out there, right?
Yeah.
So there was that.
It's something. Latch onto it.
Yeah.
Take it and run with it. God damn the FIA. They've done it again.
The only other thing they really did was shorten the DRS zones, which all the drivers seemed to raise to say, why can we reverse it? And they just said no with no real reason.
Yeah.
But I mean...
I feel like from what the pundits were saying, it's like they say that a lot of these decisions were made so far in advance that it's just how it is, but it does seem a bit weird that they can't, like, when there's pushback from the drivers and the team saying why we don't want this, why they can't just change it. I feel like that'd be a real easy change. Like, it's just a painted white line and then you move the sign back and then everyone just changes their...
The only thing I can think of is if you are shortening a zone, there's almost no reason that would increase any sort of danger or need for extra runoff, because you're inherently pulling speeds back. If you pull it forward after you've done that, there may be some regard where they have to do some sort of assessment or simulation or something to show what those extra speeds could entail. That's my only thought. It could be a bunch of bullcrap, but it's the way they might not rashly just go, put a DRS zone everywhere and there's a massive shunt somewhere and they go, well, we couldn't have expected that to happen, right?
Yeah.
I could be clutching at straws here, but I'm just trying to, think outside the box a bit. If anything, though, it might have almost played out okay, because more DRS zones might have meant that Max had an easier time chopping through the field. And I think the mixed grid helped, but the one, I guess, thing I wanted to preface this was, this felt like it was going to turn out like Baku again, but it was actually a bit more interesting. There was a bit more back and forth between drivers. There was kind of a lot of overtaking and battles in places you wouldn't necessarily expect it. It was the same kind of one-stop thing, but the tyres kind of worked out differently in a way. It was kind of both tyres had strengths and weaknesses. It wasn't just, the hard is OP, the medium is junk, why you want it, right? And they're like... At one point, even there was a tiny bit of a train forming. I thought, was it going to be another train? But then some people got by, some people pulled out of its box early or late, and it kind of like sorted itself out. Yeah. So it almost just felt like a better Baku overall.
It definitely felt like you say. I think the biggest thing was the fact that the hard tire was actually like a really good race tire, and I think that was the difference between here and Baku.
It wasn't just like at Baku where it lasted forever.
Yeah, but it was just trash.
You around
you couldn't do anything
with
it.
Push it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the mediums were quicker, but they just went off super quickly. Particularly if you started on those mediums, I feel like unless you really nursed them, you just couldn't really get them that far. I feel like if you had them, the drivers that went hards to mediums, I feel like, because lighter fuel loads and all that, I feel like they could just push those tires a little bit more. Cooler temps as well, as the sun came down, they could push them more without them destroying the tires quite as much. So toys. Toys, toys. So good. So I think it was really interesting seeing the medium to hards versus the hard to medium runners, and then the soft runners of the McLarens, which we know what happened at the end there, finishing P17, P19. Yes,
yes, I actually forgot about that. I didn't. Yes, I saw their positions. I just went, I don't remember how that happened.
yeah. They both started on the softs, and they both pitted very, 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 very quickly after the race started. And didn't. Not good. That's tires, but not
Yeah.
race.
Bit of a Sunday drive.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I feel like that was probably the most interesting thing. You know, you had everyone in the top. Was it the top 7 or 8? I think were on mediums, and then Max in P9 was on the hards. So obviously he was going to go longer. And then, you know, he had what was essentially like a race-winning stint in the middle. Then, like after everyone had come in for the mediums, and he extended on those hards while everyone was coming into pit, or while everyone was like losing. You know, all the hard runners were losing. You know. Time on those tires as they were going away. He was just getting faster and faster and faster. Like he was still setting best, you know, fastest laps on, you know, 30, 35 lap old hard tires.
35 lap old battle worn hard tires as well.
Yeah, it's like, goodness me, he just absolutely judged it to perfection, or just something, you know, he went up against the tire whisperer and beat him at his own game. It felt like, you know, yeah, just it was an incredible stint. And the reason, you know, when he did eventually pit for those hards to get the hards off and put the mediums on, he was only 2 seconds behind Checo, less than 1.5 seconds behind Checo, and that was once that happened, it's like he's 1 lap and he's passed, and that's what happened.
I think he even lost technically a second in the pits. There was an argument to say if he had a perfect pit stop,
he had a 3.1 second stop.
Ahead.
Yeah,
so,
I remember.
So yeah, I think we can cover off the Red Bulls pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah,
fortunately, there is more to talk about after that, so it's not just like we're ending here. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow. So yeah, I think you could say Checo was handed a bit of, you know, like a platter to say, look, here you go again, go out there and do it. I think still looking back, his pace was fine. It's just that Max just
killed it,
just schooled them, right? Like he had a tough job. He had everyone on mediums, and yet he overtook them all. He played it fairly safe in a track where you could easily barge someone off, have a near accident. You know, he just executed as well
dissected
as he could
his way through.
He reminded everyone, that he isn't just you know, like a typical start at the front, finish at the front.
Yeah, he can still fight his way through. Like,
he's going to get a checkbook. Exactly. He's going to get a checklist, and he's going to start at every place in his career, and he's going to win from every place on the grid.
Yeah, it does seem like that's what he's going to do, yeah. But the one move that really impressed me was the one which we can talk about this, the other
good
part
transition.
Of it. Yeah, the Leclerc-Magnussen battle, which happened twice in 2 different times in the race, where Magnussen was... Anyway, we'll go on to that in a sec, but where they were fighting and Max was behind, he could have gotten past one of them. Like, he could have done his, you know, back last year or the year before, he would just send it at the first opportunity.
Yep.
But this way, he bided his time, and then as they were battling, he just comes down the inside, down the main, like the pit straight, and then takes both of them into T1. Was watching that, it's like, that's thinking ahead. Like, that's just really good racecraft. It was incredibly smart thinking from him, just like, okay, now I've got an opportunity here to, you know, they're going to get in each other's way, and I'm just going to take advantage. And he did it so perfectly, just judged to absolute perfection. And he did that, you know, all the way through the beginning stages to fight his way through on the hard tires against the medium runners at the start of the race to make it through. And then, as we said, just had that mega stint on the hards, and then came through to win it on the mediums. So it was just a perfect race from him. It felt like there was no mistakes at all.
Yes.
And
really, his only mistake in the weekend was, let's say, having a bit of a rough quali lap. But that's why, you know, you generally get 2 to 3 laps in, and it's not uncommon for everyone to have a little bit of a slide, because the whole point is it's quali. You want to be on the edge.
Yeah.
And he could have very easily binned it, as others did and others have.
Yep.
But yes, so he made up for it as we thought he would. So full credit where it's due. Yeah, and they had a bit of a fight. It was good on Checo for trying to have a bit of a brawl, and they were respectful. It was nice
clean.
to have a little battle. You could and even afterwards when they came out of the car, though, you could tell they were both just like, that was good fun. Fair enough. You know, there was no just like, oh, bad blood. And I think during the broadcast, the media was trying to talk a little bit about how, like, oh, Checo was being left in the dark and all this and that. But people like listening back, they were like, no, I think they were telling you info, but they also were telling him a lot on his pit boards, because some drivers prefer it from pit boards like gaps, while others prefer on the radio.
Yeah.
And they were saying, no, that's complete trash. He had all he wanted. He was asking questions. He got the answers.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Checo put his hand up afterwards and said, it's a great result for the team. Max had me today. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
That was so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I do.
Maybe still a bit of doom and gloom for the championship, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably starting to, any hopes of any sort of championship contention fight is starting to slip away a little bit, particularly with such a dominant display. But
Yes.
yeah, that I do feel like the tire strategy did play probably the biggest part of the race. Because I was talking about this with you, and you said I'll talk about my thoughts on the podcast, which makes me think you disagree. But I went back and I talked about how I think that the hard to medium strategy, for the most part, was the correct strategy. And I took pretty much all the drivers that started on the hard tire and where they ended up finishing, so where they started and where they finished. We've got Max went from P9 to P1. We've got Ocon P10 to P8. We've got Hamilton P13 to P6. We've got Tsunoda P17 to P11. We've got Stroll P18 to P12. And then the only real outlier was Hulkenberg went P11 to P12. And then Zhou and Sargent, Zhou went from P14 to P16, and Sargent went from P20 and stayed P20.
He was just there to make up.
Yeah, I think that's probably more representative of the Alfa and Williams race pace, and I think also the Haas race pace, as we know, is not quite as good. But I think, did Hulk also pit later, or he also did a lot of fighting, I believe, as well?
It was kind of earlier. So
okay. Yeah.
So this was the bit that we liked. If not everyone was on the same strategy here, but you still kind of only had two strategies, right? Yeah. Which meant either if you're on the mediums, you had to pick how long you thought they were lasting compared to how long you thought the hards have.
Yeah.
Considering, I guess, pretty quickly they worked out the hards weren't going to be, a 54-lap tire, however many laps there were in this race, right? There was going to be some limit to it. Yeah, and obviously the mediums seemed very raceable for at least a good, 17, 18 laps, 20 laps if you could make it last, etc. at most. So it really depended on how you boxed on those around you, and really getting caught in traffic was a big thing. I think it was... Because looking at it, I did bring up a little chart showing positions there. I think it was that Hulk tried to box a little earlier than those around him, like Tsunoda, Stroll boxed a little later.
Yeah.
But I think Hulk, if I recall, came out and he was then stuck in a tiny bit of traffic. I don't know if it was behind Bottas or behind Albon. I think Albon and Bottas, who had already stopped on their mediums, and again, I guess both those cars' pace wasn't great, so they were running around on the hard. So he came out in his fresh mediums behind them. And if you're trying to get one lap where you really just need to push hard, kind of that first half of the lap, even if you overtake them, you're stuck behind, right? And so then the others came out, and they came out just ahead of that train, and then of course they're ahead of it, so they had fresh air to pull ahead, and then even by the time Hulk got ahead, it took him a while, and then his tires were shot anyway, and then I think he even got overtaken by Stroll, who boxed a bit later, and then he was behind Hulk, who had his worn tires from trying to fight, and he just got by him easily. So and it's not to say that Hulk was out of luck. Like early on, he was running as high as P5, I think, or P6. Quite high in that initial medium stint and running well. And as we saw from Magnussen, it would be in that Haas had decent raceability and decent pace. So I think just a bit of shame with how things worked out with him, but not really to his fault either. It showed that actually here you could have a good driver, but the strategy mattered as well. And those little things made it interesting. And I think that's where it made it better than Baku, because kind of people pit wherever in Baku, but it didn't matter. Didn't really get held up by anyone. It was just whatever, it doesn't matter. Well, here, you saw those guys boxing the first area, and then they were all at the back. You went, well, they just stuffed. But then you went, but what does the gap look like ahead? And then as the head started to box, they all kind of came together, and then they were shuffling around. And then, you had your Hamiltons, your Russells and that, and we started to fight up and found a bit of pace when they were stuck at the start. So I think it just had a few different phases. That was nice. It was at the start, I think Hamilton and Russell looked to be a bit stuck and all that, but then they kind of, jumped ahead.
I think Hamilton definitely seemed...
because Hamilton,
he was...
lap 18, was in the same place. He didn't move from 13th on the grid.
13th. He was 13th a lot. He made, particularly on those medium tyres at the end, he made... that's where he made most of his gains, once he finally pitted. It did seem...
And his first positions were really because of everyone stopping, so he had to wait. He didn't overtake anyone before people started stopping, and yet then he probably was just biding his time. He then had a good push before he then boxed, and then he was aggressive, able to overtake those which had probably cooked it too early. So
maybe he was just biding his time. Maybe he knew, maybe with all his experience, he thought, this is the best strategy. People ahead of me are going to start pitting.
Laps and thought,
just
this isn't working.
Yeah.
Just
Nurse the tires. That way, when they do start pitting, you can do a couple of real push laps or even one push lap. Try and overcut them, come out ahead, and then push on those medium tires and just fight your way through. Which, fair play. It worked for me and went from P13 to P6 in the end. That Mercedes does seem a lot better again on race day than it has seemed in qualifying. At least in the last couple of races. It's still obviously not where it should be, but it's...
Well, I mean, the fact is Hamilton started P13, so that was it didn't look like there was any clear reason why. It just looked like he couldn't just get into a zone, which is pretty rare. Well, it's been a while since that's happened. I mean, we had it in patches in the past. But that's when we thought the Mercedes were just really struggling with the new regs, and this was supposed to be right. They're a little off the pace, but they're there or thereabouts. And then it's like, oh wait, no, we're still gonna stuff it up sometimes.
Yeah, it does seem. George has just got a handle on that car again, just over him at the moment. Like, he did come back pretty close, like P4, P6 for Mercedes in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, George has currently got one over him at the moment.
There's still I think in the one lap, Russell seems to actually have a lot more confidence, and he can push it. And he probably gets part of that from his Williams days. I mean, he used to be Mr. Saturday in that Williams with a car that you'd say was a pile of bolts. So it seems like when he's trying to push on one lap, he's got it, but maybe in the race distance, Hamilton kind of has that. But with the midfield as close as it is, as we saw, one small mistake can be starting P6 versus P13. So that can be the difference if you starting run a decent race.
Starting P2 versus starting P18 in Aston Martin's case. That was an interesting one with Stroll starting P18. Like, I looked at that Q1, and Alonso wasn't that far of getting knocked out of Q1 either. Like, people don't realize that. They look at the disparity between the P2, P18, they just immediately go like, Stroll shit. Yes. It's like, well, you don't realize that he was only, a couple of tenths off Alonso in that Q1. So whatever happened in that Q1, whether they just judged it poorly in terms of, they didn't have the power all the way up because they wanted to save it, whatever the reason was, Alonso was also very close to getting knocked out. It's very, very possible that both of them could have been knocked out in that Q1.
Yeah.
It just so happened that Stroll was the one. I think he only...
Well, it just goes to show how close it is. It turns out this is a pretty good track, I think, for qualifying. I really enjoyed qualifying.
It was good. The track,
just Q1, but
the track evolution
Q2
as well was incredible. Particularly, you could see it over qualifying, but even over the practice sessions, like over the weekend, you could see how much that track was evolving every time they went out.
Yeah.
And then, I think from FP2 to FP3, there was rain, I think they said overnight, and cleaned the track, and then FP3, everyone was sort of had to start from scratch to build it up again, and you could just see how, being the last car out there was to your advantage, unless you were in Q3. If you were the last car out, then you got shafted, but that's just how it is. So I think that's what made it so interesting. The track evolution was so severe that it just kind of adds that extra bit of strategy and thinking and kind of chaos to the qualifying and sometimes the race as well, but mainly that qualifying for sure. So,
but track evolution, track evolution on a track where everyone's kind of safe on, and it's super sticky, and then it's just a matter of just time it, right? In this case, though, even if you were out in the right time, it was so easy to make, just a little error that cost you so much. I mean, how many people in practice and even in quality a bit in the race did we see through that, towards the end of the lap, through that really tight left-right-handed chicane, and how many people just cut over it because they realized turning, they would just, spin, and people even did spin. So, as much as you knew you were out there at the best time, it was brutal out there. As much as, Leclerc making a massive mistake, even Max, having two pretty big slides on his final push laps. So it wasn't smooth sailing. And even when you look at the bottom five, maybe outside of, I think, Norris, who just was the McLaren, I think, just really struggled in that qualifying.
And the race. They just struggled all weekend, to be fair. But...
Yeah, but I mean, Yuki was there, who you think might be... I was going to say they're mostly rookies, but then I'm only really looking at the bottom two, which were rookies, so there you go. But it was interesting. But as you say, between Stroll and Alonso, and I think Stroll had a decent kind of race. He did what he could. He again had a bit of a fight towards the end, but it wasn't enough to get him... You feel like if you got a P10, you could probably clap and say that was a great job. He did fine, but still you'd go a bit, okay, next 2 races, though, let's see you up the ante a bit. Let's see you consistently at least points, then consistently top 8, right? So we'll have to see how the next few races go. But I mean, looking at the other bench with Alonso, I guess starting at the front, he was happy. But again, we didn't know about that pace, and yet he did fine, and he best of the rest again. Hey, how you going?
Yeah, he's. I think every single weekend now he's gotten 15 points, so he's sitting at 75 points because he just consistently 15 points. So you can expect him to be sort of there or thereabouts just about every weekend, it seems. And he had such a lonely race. I did make note of this, how he was watching the race on the big screen and saw the Stroll move into T1. That's a very Alonso thing to do, isn't it? I can't imagine anyone else just like watching the race and to comment on it. Yeah, but
to make sure he's putting in a good word for his team.
Yes, he does seem to big him up quite a bit at the moment. But they got a good team relationship going, and I think that's
what they need.
That's 100%.
It could be easy to have something like this, and then your drivers start hacking each other to bits, and it's like, what are you doing here? We're spoiling our opportunity. So. So
it would be good to see if Stroll could sort of push them a bit further towards the front, having that extra driver up there rather than seeing him more towards the back. People, including us, I think shit on Stroll a little bit harshly, but it would be nice to see.
But I think the next few races, right? I think the next few races still totally open. I think 100%. He can do it. Presuming it's a straightforward weekend coming up in the next few as well. We'll see how he does. So, and I mean, especially with Monaco in the not too distant future, we expect that car to be pretty good there. So I think that'll be a great test for him, especially versus Alonso. So
yeah, definitely. The only thing I really wanted to mention right at the end, alluded to it at the start, the best part of the weekend was something that you brought to my attention, was the Jackie Stewart moment with Martin Brundle. I had to bring this up. I've showed it to like all my workmates as well, because I just thought it was so funny. If you haven't seen it, it was 20 minutes before the race start, and Jackie Stewart nearly gets arrested trying to get Martin Brundle an interview of Roger Federer. It was hilarious.
It's just Jackie Stewart being a homie, one of the boys.
He's serious. It was one of the best moments I've seen. What an absolute
in a moment
legend.
of just trying to be a good guy, he saw an opportunity to help out.
Yeah.
Yes, he was technically helping out Global TV, but he did it to help out his friend Martin Brundle. Really, Martin Brundle said, "I'd love to talk to him," and he just like Jackie went, "I'll help you out, bro," and he was persistent. He got up there. There was one security guard. He pushed by him. There was another one, and then you saw George Russell running over, like, "Hey, how we going?" Almost being like, "Hey, we're chill here, right? We're chill." So, what a bro. Absolute Chad.
Yeah,
loved it. You need a role model in life? If you haven't picked him already, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, seriously. I need him in my corner from now on, for sure.
Yeah.
But, that's pretty much all I had. We could talk about how most drivers don't really like the pre-race America stuff. But
it's fine. They've got to try things like this. They're in a new marketplace. It doesn't bother me. I know some people are crapping all over it, but it's like, try it. It's whatever.
Yeah,
if it gets more fans in, then you'll be going, well, I didn't like it, but more people, And I think so it's Drive to Survive, right? Yeah, people have opinions on Drive to Survive, and yet there's probably millions of new fans because of it. So hey, suck it up.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I feel like most drivers, even though they're like, I'm not really a fan of this, but I get it from an entertainment perspective, so they're just like, I'll just go with it. So, but that is what it is. And we'll see it again in Vegas. So,
exactly. See if they do something different there. No, I only had a few other notes. I think the only thing I was going to say is if Leclerc wasn't doing bad enough, Sainz kind of profited in that he got to start third. So kind of like, is this a weekend to see how he does? He had a decent first stint. I think he was battling with. So he had Russell behind him. I think Gasly behind him even then.
Yes,
Gasly was kind of leading the front.
Yeah,
which we should make a quick note. I think 8th and 9th for Gasly and Ocon. They finally just got it together after their misery in Melbourne. So good on boys. Good on you. Even if I hear a bit of dire talking about that team and the leadership going, what the hell are we doing here?
Man,
so, anyway.
That's so bad. That's a whole thing.
So I just wanted to say, Sainz started third. You'd go, oh, is he going to hold on to it? He was doing well, and then he careened it into the pits and got slapped with a penalty.
Yeah. Turns out it didn't matter, but...
it didn't matter, but then he still probably could have got the 4th off of Russell, because really they were fighting a little bit, and he would have been further ahead without having to have the Well, I guess he had, because he didn't box again, right? So he had
No.
the penalty towards the end.
Yeah.
But still, I think he did. I just want to make a point to say I think he did fine. Like, I
Yeah.
think overall on the weekend, you could say he probably did a bit stronger than Leclerc.
I think Leclerc's
But
final
still,
stint was very,
yeah.
very strong and brought him back
Yes.
probably a lot closer. He kind of did the same as Hamilton, but on the hard tyre instead. He was actually managed to fight his way through on that hard tyre to get to P7 or 8 or something.
When he finished,
yeah,
P7.
P7, yeah.
Yeah.
So, which
Kind of ahead of the best of the rest.
Which, to be fair, where he was and where Sainz started, only two positions off him in the end, P5 to P7. That final stint, I think, made a big difference for Leclerc.
It
but,
was,
yeah. But I think overall, Sainz did enough to.
I think he did all right. If he
Yeah.
got fourth, I think there would have been a bit of that's better.
Yeah.
Good on you. But yeah, still there was still that little mistake there. You went just without that. Come on, man, you would have been all right. That was just silly.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have this that often. Speeding in the pit lane. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate. But I think we alluded to as well. We got a nice little battle between Leclerc and Magnussen. Good on Magnussen.
Yeah.
He could have just let him go, and he said, "No, I'm going to fight it." And I think it showed go to show that you have two relatively close cars here. You can have a few corners. You have a bit of a back and forth, and a bit of a tussle, which you didn't really. After last year, I didn't really remember that. So with the whole field being so close, there was a lot of, you go first, no, you go first, around the outside, cut back in.
Yeah. It kind of felt like a less, a more safe version of Saudi where they had it, where the straight into, like DRS straight into corner, into DRS straight, where they're, sort of, I think I saw Max do that on Checo when he finally passed him as well, where he didn't pass him on that long back straight, even though he probably could have on those tyres. And then, left it to the pit straight to do it. So, a little bit of strategy there. And that's how Magnussen managed to stay ahead of Leclerc. The first time took Leclerc quite a long time to get past him, like quite a few laps to eventually get past him. And then when they had both pitted and come back out, Leclerc found himself behind Magnussen again, and Magnussen pulled off the exact same move to get past him. So,
and that was the thing. It's not even like this was the classic send it down the inside, cover it. People were going in the inside or defending the inside, and people then drove around the outside. They're not on the inside for the next corner.
Yeah.
So it was a nice track to show that you can have a few corners in a row, even if it seems inconspicuous, to kind of go in and around each other. And
especially given how everyone was saying, even literally before the race start, how they're saying off the racing line, there's no grip.
That was a big thing as well.
Yeah,
they're like, marbles are going to be horrible, and yet it turned out to be
really.
I think my takeaway, and as a few of the commentators said, is that they're not really dreading this race anymore. Like they were like, this wasn't great, but it's not that bad. It could have been a lot worse, and it's interesting to see how it evolves in the future. So I think that was my takeaway too. Yes, we had a bit of an exciting starting grid, but really that didn't mean anything up the front that much. But there was plenty to watch and to follow and to be entertained by.
Definitely,
As a I guess we're more of a I don't know what to call it, a passive fan, more of like a follows more than just the top layer. What are the different parts of the Earth's core called? You've got like the mantle and the
no, you're getting too scientific for me. This is
well, like 2 layers down. I'm not super nerd on all the Twitters, on all the following it all, but still enough to go. You can follow a few storylines at once going on.
So. We try and bridge the gap between basic bitch fan and sort of a little bit more of a fan, but not turbo fans. So
yes.
Yeah, that's it from us. If you haven't already, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. See more of this. We'll be doing a preview and a debrief of every single race. This year, we will be doing every single race this year. We've committed to doing it. Third time's the charm. We're going to do it. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Yuki P11 out.
Oh, yes.